All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of the Fit 40 podcast. Today we have George Pagan III in the house. He is a personal trainer since 2010. He's the owner of FITLETE Strength and Fitness Club in Miami, Florida, and the host of the FITLETE podcast. He is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to strength and conditioning for the everyday person, and I cannot wait to pick his brain. So, George, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited about doing this. I've been listening, so I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, very happy to have you on, man. I know for anybody listening, we met back in April of last year at the Real Coaches Summit, which I know I'll be at again. Are you going to be there this year too?
Well, I'm going to be there for sure.
I feel like that's my yearly one. It's going to be on as long as Ram keeps putting it on, I'm going.
Yeah, same. I think I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. And anybody here who's a super fitness enthusiast, maybe not a coach or trainer yourself, there were plenty of people there last year too who were just like, yeah, I don't work with anybody. I just like being around fit people because this is awesome. I remember Heather, the realtor, was actually one of them too. Did you get to meet Heather?
Yeah, no, I got to meet Heather, and there was a couple other people there that were like, hey, I'm thinking about getting into coaching. So they weren't even like actively coaching, but they're like, I'm thinking about it as an opportunity and wanted to talk with other coaches. So that was like another like incentive to go for people.
Talk about like such an advantage going into coaching. I'm so jealous of everyone right now who's just getting into it because like I started in 2015, you started in 2010. It's come a long way as far as educational resources.
Oh yeah, the landscape has changed dramatically since we both got into it.
Yeah, the standard has just gotten so much higher, which is awesome because people on the receiving end of coaching are getting such a higher quality product than back when we first started.
100%. Like right out of the gate, anybody who's new as a coach coming in has so many more resources to kind of get through the weeds to the actual beneficial information.
Yeah.
Whereas like we really didn't have a lot.
Absolutely. We were like reading muscle mags and praying to God that it was accurate, or like T Nation.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of going back to those times, when it comes to like your journey on the come up, like I love asking what got you into personal training because that usually reflects pretty heavily in like our businesses and the way that we coach people. Like what got you into the fun-filled world of personal training?
It started at when I was in high school. I liked being a coach, and I would volunteer as a coach in sports for like youth programs. And I didn't know exactly how I wanted to transition to that in through college and after college. So I went through college as like a kinesio major, and then when I left, I didn't know if I wanted to do like physical therapy or continuing in the coaching route. And I thought I might as well start coaching people with the knowledge I have already. And that's how I started getting into more personal training. It was like I wanted some more hands-on experience, like really quickly after graduating.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Again, so jealous you got like right into it. I kind of found my way into it, but like knowing right off the bat, such an advantage. So what were some early things that you learned like coming out of high school especially and like transitioning into that role? Like when you train people that aren't athletes, what were some of the big differences you were seeing? Because I know sometimes people get locked in on training everybody the same way.
It was just really meeting people where they are at. I didn't kind of get that in the beginning, which is like a hard lesson learned. Is I tried to train people how I wanted to train them more so than like what they were able to do right out of the gate. And that was a big learning curve for me in the beginning because I didn't really know much besides what like you said magazines and textbooks would say, and it was difficult for me in the beginning to make that transition for like practical use on the floor when training people.
Yeah. And it's funny, we're having this conversation right after I just listened to a webinar with Ben Bruno, and he's like, these textbooks and stuff, man, it's all like theory. Like you read all these things, you learn all these things, and then you can't use any of it as a personal trainer because it's
Right.
like somebody slept on their shoulder wrong or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It,
You training normal people who are working, any type of job that's available outside of training. One hour you're training a police officer, the next hour you're training an accountant, the next one a teacher. Like you can't train them all the same. They have different schedules, they have different demands on them for work. So you have to kind of be like flexible within some of those theories that they provide and teach us in textbooks.
Absolutely. It's like it's a good groundwork, but it's like you got to figure out how to mold it. Kind of like a chef. It's like everybody knows how to cook chicken, but every chef cooks it 1,000 different ways.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's so many different ways you can kind of do the same things, then that they're still beneficial for the people, even if they're not like textbook accurate or to the method by the letter.
Yeah. That's why I always crack up on like social media when coaches are like, this isn't the right way. I'm like, he must not have
Yeah.
been coaching long, buddy.
Right. That's like a good little tool for people to find somebody who's actually been coaching. Is like if they're really talking like in black and whites, then they haven't done it for too long.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so hard as like somebody who has coached for so long, like making content like it is nowadays. Cause you're like, I want to say this one absolute thing, but then it's like, I know 20 clients in the back of my head that break this mold.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I go through the same things like do I even put something out that says that or do I just, try to say the thing that I do with clients like on a practical sense.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of like the differences with clients, like if you were to nail some things down, like some commonalities that you find across the board with just everyday people, parents, people that are professionals that just live normal lives, what are some of the biggest struggles that you see them facing? And how do you field those struggles like in the gym and even outside of the gym?
I think the most common one is the everyone comes in thinking it has to be a complicated process to get going. Where I really try to take people to make them take a step back and be like, we can simply step by step go through this process. It doesn't have to be this complex puzzle you need to put together to reach these goals. They're pretty simple steps. We just have to execute those simple steps.
Yep, absolutely. I love when it gets simplified because it's like what's that like I forget who said it, but they're like you don't really understand something unless you can make it simple. And that's
Yeah,
the whole goal of coaching, right? Is like we make it bite-sized, we make it doable for the average person.
right. Right.
So
Yeah, we know all this info, like we just have to make it digestible and usable. Like that's it.
yeah, exactly. And when somebody does come in and you're just like, okay, we're doing X, Y, and Z, what are some things that you'd like to cover in like that first session? So if somebody's like, okay, I'm going to the gym for the first time, like what would you tell them if you weren't there like side by side coaching?
Just find out what movements they already really like to do, because then we can optimize those instead of trying to teach them brand new ones. Uh, that's like the first thing that I do is like, look, we're going to go through like a generalized warm up, and then maybe they'll, without thinking about it, tell me that they like doing this type of exercise, or like, I like doing push ups more than lunges. So it's like, okay, great, I can make a note to be like, we're going to do a little more push ups rather than lunges to get them started.
Yeah. I, and I'm glad you brought that up because the enjoyment factor is something that kind of gets left out of the conversation, especially nowadays with the optimization route that people
Oh
get
yeah.
sucked into. Like, are there any ways that you really like to make it enjoyable more other than like saying, okay, what do you actually enjoy? But are there any other methods? Because I know some trainers do have some like unique methods to make things a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit more fun.
I like to pair things into either supersets or small like triplet type circuits, um, to better utilize time, because we're all kind of squished for time, and I only provide hour sessions. So I like to kind of give them, maybe let's say like a strength based exercise, a time based exercise that's a little bit of like conditioning and endurance, and then
Hmm.
maybe like a stretch. So it's like they get a lot of things all together in one in a short period of time. And then second is I like to use the time based exercises with a rep goal. So like I love to prescribe people like a 3 minute push up where they have some autonomy into how many reps they can do in 3 minutes, but the goal is to do the max.
Love that. Honestly, like this is why I love having personal trainers on because I'm remembering stuff from the past that like kind of fell off. That is such a fun way to like compete a little bit, but like in an
Yeah,
intelligent way.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Like I'll be like in 5 weeks, so we're gonna do this again, and I want you to try to beat this number that you're getting today. And it's like, all right,
that's
it's a
awesome.
nice little way for them to compete with themselves.
Absolutely. And you're checking so many boxes doing that too. It's like you're not just getting stronger, you're getting better endurance, you're getting better cardio by doing that long. So it's like
Yeah,
you're knocking off so many amazing things along the way.
right, right. It kind of hits a bunch of things like you're saying. Like I can test to see or record like how many reps they did before they took their first break. and did they have an improvement or not, and then have the total number at the end, obviously too.
Yeah, because it gets into the whole concept of like progression, which is honestly one of those things that I think a lot of people don't exactly take into account when they're striving for whatever goal it is. A lot of people like say with a fat loss goal because as trainers, that usually tends to be one of the big ones people are going for. So, like, what other markers do you like to point out? It's like, okay, we're falling in love with getting stronger and doing more reps. Like, what are some other ones that you would say if somebody, like, they're not going to see the scale drop every single day? So, in the meantime, what should they look at?
I like to focus on how they actually feel. Like most people that are going to come in will have something that doesn't feel great on them when they either perform an exercise for the first time, or they report it doesn't feel good at home. And I try to say use that as a way to be like getting a check in when they're out of the gym. That makes it easier for them to see some progress. Like, oh, they used to feel pain getting off the couch in their lower back, for example, and like now they can do sitting and standing no problem. Or like I have an older client. She never used to be able to kneel down on one knee, and now she does it without any hesitation. Like those things where they're not really like numerical or metric based things to track, but they're like she can actually do something again that she used to be able to do in the past. And that's another big moment when they make that realization.
Love that. Love that. Because these are real life things, which I think
Yeah,
many people don't exactly think of when it comes to the gym is like, oh, a gym's a place where I burn calories, where I lift weights. It's like, no, you make life easier. Like you make it more enjoyable.
yeah, exactly. That's the big part is I try to make some connection to something that they can do or track on their own outside of the gym, because then it gives them some more easier adherence when they actually have times where it's not so hard, not so easy in the gym. When they don't feel good or don't want to show up that day, or they don't want to push for that little bit extra. And you can have them reflect on these moments where like, hey, we did all this stuff before, and it might have felt uncomfortable now, but it made so big of a difference in your quality of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are those like eye opening moments where it's like, oh, wow, didn't even realize that. Cause I think too, a big underrated component of having a coach is being able to point those things out because we're human. We're going to take all the good stuff for granted. But as a coach, it's like that's part of the job where it's like, you got to realize that, hey, I need to like let you know, by the way, you're kicking ass and taking names just in case nobody told you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of like outside the gym where we're talking about better quality of life, all this stuff, do you address like basic nutrition stuff with these people too? So that way they get the whole 100%?
Yeah, again, that's it's in the same way that I do training. I try to meet them where they're at, where like maybe we don't address it right away, and I try to sprinkle in some tips and tricks along the way until they're ready to make that leap outside the gym. Because in the gym, like I have a lot of the control. I tell them what to do. They all they have to do is show up and put in the work. But at home, it's that like they are their own parent essentially on doing the activities that they're supposed to be doing, quote unquote. And that's always a bigger challenge for people.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my big thing that I had written down here is because I know you're in Miami, Florida, and there are a lot of delicious restaurants out there. And I know that's probably one of the hardest things when it comes to people trying to get in shape and maybe lose a few pounds. Do you have any good tips for when it comes to eating out, especially in like an area where it has amazing food when you go out?
I try to ask them to try one thing. If it's like a new restaurant, like make sure you're trying one thing that you really want to try, rather than like trying to get everything on the menu because it's new. Because if you like the food, you can always go back a second time, but you don't have to make that one trip, like the all or nothing visit to this restaurant. Because in Miami, there's restaurants now that are popping up, you know, every month that are brand new to the area. So you can go someplace new every single night if you really wanted to.
Yeah, that's absolutely wild because I got friends and family down there and they're just like, it's insane. And almost all of them are good food. It's not like they're just
Right.
randomly popping up and it's like crappy.
Right.
It's like, no, these are legit restaurants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's plenty of opportunity to do that. So if like I always try to tell them, try to pick one thing that you really really want, enjoy it, but enjoy that one thing, not two appetizers, an entree, and dessert, and all the alcohol in the world. It's like really go for that entree that you really want. Like then try to tame everything else.
Yeah, definitely. Or find a tapas place. Or tapas.
Yeah,
I sound so white. Tapas?
tapas, yes,
Tapas.
tapas.
Find a tapas place because then you could get a little bit of everything, but the portions are in check.
Yeah, a little more controlled for you.
Yep, absolutely. So love all those tips because like you said in the beginning, these are all super simple, super digestible, no pun intended, or actually it was, but
Yeah, pun intended.
yeah, pun intended. Um, Now, to bring it back to, or I guess to put like a cap on all of it, like when it comes to the mental side of things, when it comes to staying consistent with lifting, with eating well, what are some commonalities you noticed from some of your most successful clients? Like some things that they do or that they say that you're just like, yeah, this kind of seems to be across the board what the most successful people do and say.
I think that they are the ones that I have that are successful. They're vocal when they notice that they're having some sort of a plateau or problem. Because if you're not at least communicating it to yourself and the person who's supposed to be trying to help you get towards the goal and improvements, then it's a lot more difficult to see those results. And I don't think it's good for them to kind of hold things in and feel like they have to do it on their own when they actually have somebody who's in their corner. Like, because we're with a coach, like we're training with them, we want to be that support. And really, like, they hired us to be that support. So I've really tried to make the environment one where they feel open enough to tell me when things are not satisfying for them.
Yeah, that's so huge. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. And anybody who's not watching the video version of this, my neck hurts from nodding so much as he was talking because like it's wild when somebody signs up for coaching or personal training and they're just like, yeah, you give me the X's and O's, I'll take care of everything else. It's like, no, 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 no. Like the X's and O's are the easy part. Like I'm here for the hard stuff.
Right. Right. Like I can give you workouts and advice all day. It's like if you're not gonna at least communicate with me of the things that are actually difficult for you to do, like then we're gonna be kind of beating our heads against the wall because we don't know how each other is doing and thinking.
Yep. It's that communication aspect where it's like you kind of are always in this like together where it's not like tell me what to do. Got it. Okay, I'll be back. No, it's like you're always kind of side by side doing
Right.
this journey together.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, for me too, I have to make sure that I'm asking the right questions as a coach. So like you can't communicate the same way to every single person. So you kind of have to tailor questions a little bit differently. And that's one of the things, like if I notice that a client's not being as vocal as maybe some other people are, like, oh, I have to change the style of communicating that I'm doing with them because I'm not getting across that, like, I want to know when things are tough.
Yeah. And that's another huge thing. I know I'm personally trying to work on that as well, where it's like you got to be a little bit different depending on how people respond. So it's definitely goes both ways. And
Yeah,
that's why it's
100%.
so important to find a personality match when it comes to finding a coach, finding a personal trainer, because the person that you stick with the longest is going to get you the best results every single time. Even if they're not like perfect, even if they're not the best ever, if you match up personality wise and you stay around for the long haul, you're going to see some success.
100%. Yeah, like the personal side of training, like I know it's a little bit cliche for some people to kind of keep repeating, but it's like it's just as if not more important than the training side of personal training. Like you have to be a good fit with the coach you have in order to see some of those results. Otherwise, like you said, you're not going to communicate, and it's going to be a more difficult process.
Yeah. And if somebody here right now, like say you have a session lined up with for a free first session, like you're at Crunch or Planet Fitness or whatever, do the beer test. Like ask yourself at the end of the session, would I go and have a beer with this person? Yes or no? And that's a pretty good indicator.
Yeah, yeah, you're spending an hour at a minimum, an hour with this person on a weekly basis, if not more. Like if you don't like that person, like it's going to be a little bit difficult for you to convince yourself to go on days where you don't really want to go.
Yeah. And honestly, any personal trainer worth their salt, like if somebody comes to you and says, "Yeah, I just don't think it's personality fit." Nothing against you, just like I'm looking for something different. Totally understand. Like every trainer is not going to be perfect for everybody, but you got to find that personality match and make sure that you hold on for dear life and make sure they don't go anywhere.
Yeah. And I think it's important too that the like for clients to voice the things that they want out of sessions too. This way you know as a coach like what exactly they want from you in those sessions. So you know like, oh, if I'm a really talkative coach and I know that this client like likes me but doesn't, want me to talk a whole lot, like then that's okay too. Like there's you don't have to be, best friends. You just have to, be able to work together well.
Absolutely. And it's funny that like so many coaches are so different in that way. Like sometimes you will get a chatterbox, sometimes you will get somebody who barely talks, but it's like just match up. Got to figure out what your style is. And honestly, somebody might be super flexible. You might find somebody who's super chatty, but then by the end of the session, they've tailored their approach and it's like, wow, I wasn't a big fan, but at the end, no, this guy's pretty solid.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, you just have to feel it out a little bit and be honest with what you want as a coach and what you want as a client, like what the client wants, and
Yeah.
make
And
sure you guys are on the same page.
And speaking of that whole intake process, like at FITLETE, for example, what do you guys like to do when it comes to like asking somebody what their goals are, what their whole setup is, and like getting them going?
I try to, as much as possible, get some of that information before meeting them in person, just to get a general sense of what they want. And then when I see them in person, I really try just to get to know them while instructing them doing exercises. Like we talk about, things about their day, like what have they been doing while I'm getting some assessment work done with them. So it doesn't seem like it's like a question and answer interview or like an interrogation, like, oh, what do you do when you're not here? And like, what time do you go to bed? I try to make it like, like, what'd you do for the weekend? Maybe that gives me some insight into how they spend their time out of gym and out of the work. So it just like make it more conversational.
Yeah. And another gigantic green flag. It's like, let's make this chill. Like, why does it have to be so like rigid? We
Yeah.
don't have to make this seem like you're applying for a job.
Right, right, exactly. Like it's, I'm not gonna be putting a price tag on a car, being like, this is the MSRP on it, like this is what we're doing, and give you all the feature details, and then hopefully like you buy at the end. Like it's like if you buy, you buy. If not, like we'll find something that works for you.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the cool things about like personal training, for example. It's like, hey, listen, I'll tell you exactly what we're gonna do. This is what I think will like benefit you the most, and if you don't want it, that's cool. Like, let's figure out something else. Like,
Yeah,
it's not some
yeah,
high
exactly.
pressure sales thing, or at least it shouldn't be.
No, no, yeah, it shouldn't. I mean, I've had people when I've applied to different jobs like, hey, this is how we sell, and it's just like I actually don't want to do that.
Because it always struck me as like, okay, if we're starting off on this like really rigid, really strict, like gotcha moment, like how's the rest of that relationship going to be? It's like you want somebody that actually wants to be there, not like that's locked into a contract and they can't dip out of it.
Yeah, yeah, that was one of the things I noticed as a coach when I worked for a larger club versus a smaller studio. Is the smaller studio had a really more personalized approach to those intakes, and the large club had like a really systematized approach uh, that made it uncomfortable for a lot of people, even people that I wasn't the one doing the intake for. Like, but other coaches be like, oh, they're really against doing this in the jumpstart session of what we did. But it's like that was the thing we had to do as coaches, like bring them through this whole process of like telling them what was wrong with them first and how they can change things and like how I can fix it, but they can't do it on their.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up because now I'm thinking back to the studio I was at, and it's like same deal where it's like, all right, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z throughout the session, but like, don't hurt them, have fun, do what you got to do. Like, change it up
Right.
however you need to.
Yeah, yeah. It's like such a more loose and an open approach to meeting people where they're at.
Yeah, yeah. Because at the end of the day, this whole process should be fun. It should be enjoyable. It should feel somewhat frictionless. Like if you're in the right place in the right situation.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I think everybody listening will definitely get a lot out of this if they're interested in hiring a trainer. And if you're in Miami, you'd be absolutely crazy not to go to George. So if you're in Miami, get to FITLETE. But anywhere else, like if you're not in the area, then definitely look for these green flags when it comes to like your personal trainer that you're looking into and all that. And if you have any questions, you could always reach out to one of us. We love
Yeah.
chatting about this stuff.
Yeah. I'm an open book, like I was saying before. Just ask me anything.
Yeah. And speaking of which, if somebody wanted to check out all your stuff and make sure that they could get in contact with you, where could they find you?
I am on Instagram quite often at FITLETE Nation, all one word, and then generally through the website. I update my website on a regular basis, and that's just fitletes.com.
Love it. And you guys don't have to go anywhere. Don't have to go search for it. It's going to be down in the show notes, down in the description, wherever the heck you're watching or listening. And all I ask in return is that if at any point you heard something valuable that you know a friend or family member needs to hear during this podcast, go and send this their way. They'll be thankful for it and we'll love you for it. All right. So we'll put a cap on it because I know we covered so much good stuff and this is probably the most concise podcast to date and I don't want to overload anybody. So we'll take a second, we'll chomp on it, we'll let this marinate and definitely check out another episode in the meantime if you want some more. But George, thank you for taking the time out of your day for doing this. For those of everybody who made it this far, thank you for making it this far. So until next time, go kick some ass. I'll see you later.